Hey guys, I'm Daniel Norton. I'm here in the Hudson Valley and we're going to walk around today and shoot a little bit of product photography using natural light. So when I was living in Miami and shooting a lot of catalog work, this is something we did a lot during the day. Basically, you've got your models, they're the main shots, right? And they need time to change, they need makeup, etc., etc. So when all that downtime was going on, we would always go off to the side and shoot some simple product photography. This saved us time later, so we didn't have to go back to the studio at the end of the day and photograph like shoes and accessories and close-ups. So the way we did it, we just basically used a giant silk, right? Very, very simple. Find a good spot, line your product up, get the light in a good spot, put a silk over it, it looks great, right? So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna walk around, I have a few things in my backpack, and I'm gonna shoot a few different types of products so you can see how this would work. And basically they're all gonna have the same kind of fundamental idea. We're gonna find the shot, we're gonna set it up, we're gonna get our exposure, then we're gonna add the silk. The trick here is to add, when we bring the silk in, is to put it as close as possible to the product, because that's gonna make your light source large, right? Remember, large light equals soft light. So when we think about the sun, right, it's very far away, so it's very small, right? So out here, we're getting this light that's really bang, bang, bang hitting us, right? But when you're in the shade, like I am here, I'm under some trees, right? Somebody's driving a motorcycle down the street. Basically, I'm in soft light, right? So we're gonna create that where we want. Now, yeah, you could just take your product and put it here, but what the advantage of using the silk is that we can put it in this like punchier daylight that's really crisp and add our diffusion, and we can really shape the light the way we want it. So that's why we're gonna do that versus just like sticking it, under a tree. That creates very flat, boring light. This is gonna create kind of like creamy light. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot this little knife set that I have. So I'm gonna put it in harsh light, really heavily backlit, and then we're gonna bring the silk in and we're going to basically soften that light up by bringing the silk in nice and close. That's gonna give us a smooth light across the blade, across the sheet that has the name of the company on it, and it's just gonna give us a much more satisfying look to the shot than it would be if we just went with, the straight sun. Okay guys, so I have the knife over here. It's basically on this log. I'm set up a shot that I like. I'm kind of like, get the knife leaning here with the sheath. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just do a shot with the natural light first. So I'm just gonna look through here, find a good spot to focus. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to adjust I'm at 5.6, I'm gonna leave that consistent. I'm just gonna adjust my shutter speed down to, let's say, that looks pretty good there at 250. So there we go, right? 250. I mean, it's lit, right? And it's kind of harsh and it kind of matches the environment, but it's a bit much, I think, right? I think we're getting a really bright highlight. It's not ideal. So what we're gonna do is bring this in. And again, we wanna get it in as close as possible without being in the shot. Now this is gonna eat some light. So I'm gonna adjust my exposure. That looks about right to me. There, I believe. And we'll take a shot. There we go. So of course the background comes up, right? The background's a bit brighter now because, relatively speaking, I exposed, but we can see now how nice and soft the light is on the sheath, and of course on the product itself. It's easy to read, and it's, it looks beautiful. It's like a studio shot. The log itself looks good. I see there's some green on this. I'm gonna make sure it looks good, right? And again, I'm just styling this here. If you were doing this for a catalog, or if you had, let's say, for a small brand, you might have the owner or a stylist here, doing this, and it'll go really fast. And actually having an assistant helping you also helps. I'm going to do that. I'm basically turning the sheath, even though it's a little unnatural. I'm going to turn it that way so that I can actually read the brand better. And let's see what that looks like if we do one more shot. Yeah, there we go. Now we can read it really nicely. Good. Okay guys, really simply here, right? I've got my boots set up. We've got it in this kind of dappled light. We'll take a shot here, at the proper exposure. And we can see that, again, it's dappled. It just doesn't look very good for the boots, right? It's kind of a little bit uneven. It doesn't show the boots to their best effect. But what we can do is take, again, just a simple diffusion panel. And we want to get it in as close as possible. That's really the key here, because that's going to make the light nice and big and soft. And we can see the difference right there, right? We can see right there that we basically maintain the same exposure, but we've lowered our contrast, right? Because that's what diffusion does. And that gives us a nice, beautiful shot of the boots, kind of studio quality shot, but in the location. And I kept the feel of the location by allowing some of the dappled light in the back to stay. Nice and simple. Okay, so for this one, I've got this trail food, right? It's like dehydrated and like sealed in this plastic here. So it's very shiny. Plastic is going to be shiny, right? And if we put it in the environment, let's say lean it against this tree here, where it looks pretty good, we're going to get lots and lots of kind of really rough light on it. So let's take a shot of that to show you what that looks like. So again, diffusion is all about your highlights. So if I take my silk and I bring it in here, and I'm going to actually try to get a bit of the tree in as well so that it stays nice and even. And we'll take a shot again with the silk, you know, and now we have this beautiful lit, again, like studio lit product. It still shows the brightness, but it's not so much so that you can't read it anymore. You know, nice and simple, big difference. Okay, so for this last shot, I have these notebooks I wanted to photograph, and I found actually this kind of rock that's half in the shade, half out. So another great thing diffusion can do is it can even light out, right? So instead of just thinking of it as blocking light, you know, it can actually expand itself and create a better light source. So I'll show you basically here. So we've got this. If I were to shoot it just as it is, you guys will see that, yeah, I probably could go in and like bring my highlights down and my shadows up and try to flatten it. But if I just take this piece of diffusion and I bring it in, I'm actually kind of bring it in kind of almost sideways to it, right? Following the angle of the sun. We take that shot and we can see how much more even that is. In fact, it didn't really even change the exposure much, right? Depending on where the angle and what you're doing, the exposure may or may not change by much. I think I'll give myself a little bit, for some reason I was at 7.1, I'm gonna go back to 5.6, so 6.3 basically. And do one more for good measure. Yeah, it looks great, right? And you get that little hint of the hot spot at the top. If that was bothering you, I probably could bring the diffuser in and get rid of that. But I actually kind of like that it adds that little drop off in the corner for me. So, you know, kind of depends on what you're doing. Again, this looks pretty natural because it is. This is just natural light. I'm out here shooting. It's really easy. I've got basically the one thing, right? I have the diffuser, I have my camera, tripod, makes life easier. I'm shooting tether, of course. But, you know, in theory, you could come out there. And what's great about doing this natural light stuff is you could use any camera for this. So if you are watching this and you're thinking, well, I don't have, you know, a DSLR and I don't have, you know, a laptop and blah, blah, blah. You could really do this with just about anything because we're just using the natural light. Any camera that you can really control the setting and a nice diffuser. And I really like this Lastolite one, but of course there's all different versions you can get. You get bigger ones if you're doing bigger things. You can get smaller ones. You can get the pop-up ones that are less expensive. But if you're gonna do a lot of this, I recommend getting the best one you can afford because the fabric will make a difference. That nicer, heavier diffusion will actually give you a lot more kind of creamy light, as I say, and a lot more clean light. It'll make it so it doesn't throw a weird color. So I think it's kind of interesting that a lot of times as photographers, when we get these things, we tend to use the bouncy side, the reflector the most, right? We're in the studio or whatever, we're bouncing flash off of it. But when you're out shooting product and stuff in the field, the diffusive fabric becomes super, super useful. So make sure you guys subscribe to Adorama TV and ring the bell so you get all the notifications. Go ahead and follow me, Daniel Norton Photographer, and I'll see you next time on set. I think this is going to be nice